I'm Loretta Swit. Tonight on Intimate Portrait, Mae West.
Goodness, what beautiful diamonds. Goodness had nothing to do with it, dearie.
In her long show business career of almost 80 years, Mae West burst more bubbles of sexual and social pretensions than any other entertainer. She won fame and fortune. At one time, she had the highest reported income of any woman in America, and her Westisms were quoted everywhere. She was the 20th century's icon of sex, one of the first truly emancipated women. Mae was born in Brooklyn, New York, on August 17, 1892, or 93, or maybe 1900, or possibly 1888. Most have settled for 1893. Records of vital statistics were not well kept, and the true birth date will remain a mystery. For she was a legend, and legends are not born, they're made. Mae's mother, Matilda, named her Mary Jane, but it was soon changed to Mae, spelled with an E, because, as Mae explained, the Y went down and an E went up. And Mae knew she was going up. Her father, John West, ran a livery stable with horse-drawn carriages for rent. He was known as Battlin' Jack because he had once been a prize fighter. He took baby Mae to the gym on many occasions. Perhaps it was there that her taste for muscular men developed.
Are you tall, dark, and muscular?
Oh, Miss West, pardon me while I slip into my robe.
Never mind. It pays to advertise.
Matilda, affectionately known as Tilly, quickly pulled her baby away from the gym and pushed her into amateur nights at the local theaters. She thought Mae was very special and made for the limelight. Mom would work behind the scenes. The year was 1901.
I believe she was 7 years old. She had entered a contest in Brooklyn, and she had to sing a song. They gave her the words to sing, and unbeknownst to anybody else, she rewrote the words and wrote extra words for herself. She did the number and she won a prize.
Continuing to win amateur nights led to her entrance, with Mom's pushing and blessings, into vaudeville. She was only 8 years old. Mae worked hard to perfect her craft. She later said, "My education was the theater." The only time she spent away from the stage was between the ages of 12 and 14, the awkward years. She got to know her sister Beverly and her brother John. She later said these were happy times and her only remembrance of early family life. In 1908, it was back to vaudeville and playing the circuit. This meant long periods of time on the road. The road was lonely and dangerous for a single girl, so when she was 17, the show was in Milwaukee, and she secretly married a cast member by the name of Frank Wallace.
He was a hoofer in one of the Schubert shows, and she said she married him for protection, that she felt at least now she was a married woman.
But Mae didn't have time for love and domestic bliss.
I believe Mae's love affair was really with herself in the end, because it was herself, the only one she really knew, the only one she could really trust, the one who really knew the secrets that Mae, I don't think, really enjoyed imparting to any other people. including those who considered her their very dear, close, wonderful friend.
Mae appeared in a Ned Wayburn vaudeville revue called A la Broadway. She continued to learn and grow and searched for the characterization that would be forever Mae West. Vaudeville required performers magnetic enough to dominate an enclosed area on the stage, and with the specialness of their personalities, hold the attention of the audience until the finale of their act. Mae constantly worked toward that end. Mae received good reviews for her work in A la Broadway, but she had not yet found the indelible image she sought.
It took Mae West about 30 years to create the image that would sustain her throughout her very long career, which was nearly 80 years, and her long life. She once said to me, she said, when your parents put you on a stage when you're 5, you learn to take care of yourself.
And take care of herself she did. On November the 20th, 1911, she finally opened on Broadway for the world-famous Schubert brothers in a Romberg operetta, Vera Violetta, starring Al Jolson. Then it was back to vaudeville. Unlike burlesque, vaudeville was not looked down on, and for survival, performers often played on the circuit, as well as on Broadway. She teamed up with 2 young men, Bobby O'Neill and Harry Laughlin. They played the circuit as Mae West and the Gregory Brothers. She almost caused a riot in New Haven by driving the students from Yale in the audience to stampede when she did her wriggle. She twisted her body with sinuous, writhing motions, and the blue-nosed censors were up in arms. The cautious theater owner played it safe and fired the act. The newspapers said that her wriggles cost her her job. In spite of this, Mae was pleased. The audience reaction had excited her. She knew she was on the right path to future stardom. It was only a matter of time and an unswerving attention to the creation of what would become Mae West. Her search for image and success in the quirky arena called show business led Mae to write her own sketches for the act. She would constantly shape the material to serve her own purposes. She admitted that her ego was grand, but it was bringing in $350 a week for the act, a lot of money at that time. Flo Ziegfeld, who would gain fame for his follies, produced a comedy, The Winsome Widow, in 1912, in which Mae appeared when she was just 19 years old. Then she set out with a solo act on the Keith vaudeville circuit, billed as the original Brinkley Girl. The act was provocative, to say the least.
In its earlier stages, according to all records and people I've known, like George Cukor, actually saw the stuff, it was pretty raw, you know, it was pretty raunchy for that era.
1914 began her lifelong association with her mother's lawyer, James Timoney, who gave up his law practice to manage Mae's career. There are stories of a quick romance and after that a lot of jealousies on the part of Timoney, but he managed Mae until the day he died and kept her focused on her career. Mae introduced the shimmy dance to Broadway at the Schubert Theater in the musical Sometime. She based the dance on her observations of dancers she had seen in a low-down jazz club called Elite No. 1 on Chicago's South Side. There was little movement of the feet, just shaking of the torso, breasts, and pelvis. It translated to the audience in a rather amazing way when Mae did it. They stomped their feet and whistled, and the critics approved. And Mae approved of the audience's reaction and continued to give them what they wanted. In 1921, she was Cleopatra in a play called Mimic World and dazzled the eyes of boxer Jack Dempsey. He asked her to make a screen test for his film called Daredevil Jack, but the picture was never made. Hollywood was still a long way down the road for Mae. Venturing into the male-dominated area of the playwright, Mae began to write her first play under the name of Jane Mast. It would deal with a prostitute with a heart of gold, Margie Lamont. She thought about what the play should be called, settled on a working title, The Albatross. When she completed the manuscript, she read it to her mother and her manager, James Timoney, who decided they should produce the play themselves. Of course, Mae would star. The money was raised and Mae hired the director, Mr. Edward Elsner, who encouraged her not to act, that her self-mocking sexuality acquired from vaudeville was all she needed to bring Margie to life. Mae decided that the title The Albatross was too heavy. She informed Elsner the play would have a one-word title, sex. He said if only we would dare use that word. And dare they did. Sex opened on Broadway at the Daily Theater in April of 1926, and it was shocking.
The word was unheard of to be put of in print. And when she wanted sex put on top of the theater and lights, they would not do it. But the play had great publicity, great notoriety. And the only part of sex that really related to sex was the curtain in Act 1. She's covered with a blanket, and the leading man jumped on top of her. Curtain came down, and she was arrested.
She ended up spending, I think, 10 days in jail, Welfare Island or something. And she always had dinner with the warden, though. And she also said she got to wear her own underwear.
In addition to the jail sentence, she was fined $500 for corrupting the morals of youth. This charge would be leveled at her time after time during her long career. But as Mae said, she who laughs, lasts. And Mae was laughing. She had received $1 million worth of free publicity for her play. She was the talk of the town, a personality to reckon with, a legend in the making. Mae began to cut records on the famous Brunswick label. She sang, purred, low-down honky-tonk songs, and her sensual styling wove into the jazz accompaniment in a way that said she had lived what she sang. In 1928, Mae finished writing the play with which she would become forever synonymous, Diamond Lil. Diamond Lil was set in the gay 90s in a dance hall in the Bowery. Gangsters and regulars mixed together in the opulent setting. Lil was the super businesswoman and was at the top. Again, she had a heart of gold and brilliant diamonds given to her by her many admirers. Mae surrounded herself with men, on stage and off.
Mae West produced herself. She was very witty. As a human being, she was also very kind, but she didn't necessarily like women. She much preferred being with men.
In Diamond Lil, she sang the rather suggestive song, Frankie and Johnny, and spoke the line that would become identified with her forever.
Why don't you come up and see me sometime?
The search for the elusive image was over. Diamond Lil was the culmination of all the characteristics that Mae had found in nearly 30 years of vaudeville.
When she came across the material that became the basis for Diamond Lil, this is where she got her frame, work, everything came together. And she was 35 by that time. She had developed this wonderful way of quips and spontaneous lines. And by putting it in an 1890s framework, this gave her some distance. And the whole image started to come together. And this was where she had her really great big success, and people took her seriously. As she always said, she said, I'm not a sex symbol, I'm a sex personality, which I thought was a very astute distinction. And this is where the beginning of the Mae West image emerged.
Diamond Lil opened on Broadway at the Royal Theatre on April 9, 1928, and ran for 176 performances, and then went on a highly successful tour. Successful revivals would follow for over the next 30 years. In her autobiography, Goodness Had Nothing to Do with It, Mae wrote, Diamond Lil, I'm her and she's me, and we're each other. She added, Lil and I, in my various characterizations, climbed the ladder of success, wrong by wrong. In 1930 came a blow that staggered Mae and closed Diamond Lil in Los Angeles. Her beloved mother, Tilly, became ill. Mae canceled the tour and rushed home to be with her, but she died. Mae said of this experience, her death was the greatest shock and deepest sorrow of my life. Father and another man had to hold me as I howled for self-destruction. Finally, she returned to work in a play she had written, based on her own novel, Babe Gordon, retitled The Constant Sinner. Again, Mae played a prostitute with a heart of gold. It would be Mae's final Broadway show for many years. Talking pictures had arrived. The concept of filmmaking was turned upside down. No more title cards and exaggerated action. The movie moguls wanted actors and actresses that had voices, and Mae certainly had that, and a lot of other things. So, in 1932, when Paramount Pictures called, Mae said, "Should think about it."
It's one thing to be a stage star, even in tour, all the key cities of America, but it's another thing when you have the tremendous access of the silver screen and neighborhood theaters and movie palaces all over the country, all over the world. And this is where I think she really had her big, lasting impact.
In June of that year, she and her manager, Jim Timoney, boarded a train for the West Coast. It was bye-bye, New York City. California, here I come. From the moment the train pulled into the station, Mae felt as if she had entered another reality. Hollywood in 1932 was not the Hollywood that it is today. It was still a little town in many ways, and the movie industry was just beginning to turn itself into a colossus. There was sunshine and palm trees. There were beautiful people on the streets. And there were studios in Hollywood where they actually made motion pictures. Paramount was one of them. Paramount had secured an apartment for Mae that was only a mile from the studio. It was called the Ravenswood. Mae approved. It reminded her of New York. Little did she know at the time that this would be her main residence for the rest of her life. Some in Hollywood were intrigued with Mae, but others, like gossip columnist Luella Parson, were skeptical. She wanted to take the big Broadway star down a notch or two.
When she first came to Hollywood, Luella Parsons interviewed her, and she says, well, how do you think the theater audience is going to accept you? You know, you're a Broadway star. And she says, well, she said, if they're paying $40 to $50 a ticket to see me on the stage, I think they'll pay 2 bits to see me on the screen.
After her first picture, Night After Night, which starred her old friend from the stage, George Raft, audiences gladly shelled out more than 2 bits to see Mae again.
Oh, honey, how's business? Fine. Been insulted lately? Goodness, what beautiful diamonds. Goodness, I've nothing to do with it, dearie.
Night After Night was a hit. Studio chief Adolf Zukor said it brought Paramount back from the brink of bankruptcy. Although Mae only received 4th billing in the picture, it was clear that it was her presence that brought an otherwise dead movie to life.
She had a small part in it, but she made it the focus of the picture. I believe she had a scene with a character actress called Alison Skipworth. And Miss Skipworth was furious when the scene was over because she felt that she was left in the background, and it was her scene.
Maudie, do you believe in love at first sight?
I don't know, but it saves an awful lot of time.
Everyone agreed. Mae stole the picture. George Raft, who had recommended Mae for the part, laughed and said, Mae stole everything but the camera. Her second picture was based on Mae's play, Diamond Lil.
They had to change the name because they didn't think Diamond Lil sounded good. The original working title was Ruby Red, and then they changed it to She Done Him Wrong. And that's the first movie with Cary Grant.
She Done Him Wrong was a big success, and Mae was an even bigger one. The public loved her, and so did Paramount. She was a movie star, and acted accordingly. Her talent made her seem 10 feet tall, but in reality, she was just under 5 feet. So to be on the safe side, she wore 7-inch heels under her long dresses. The last time anyone saw her legs professionally was when she played a lion tamer in I'm No Angel. I'm No Angel was Mae's 3rd movie, and Cary Grant was once again her co-star. Stories circulated that the two had an affair. If they didn't, everyone wanted to think they did. Just how Mae and Cary ended up together in the movies depends upon who is telling the story.
She was in the car going, I believe, to her set when she said, stop the car. And she was looking through the window and she said, who's that? Now that's a good-looking guy. That's the guy I want for my picture, my next picture. And that's how Cary Grant's career was born.
The night of the big Hollywood premiere for I'm No Angel in 1934 at Sid Grauman's Chinese Theater was a gala affair. All the stars came out, the brightest being Mae.
Hello, folks. I wish you were up here at Mr. Grauman's beautiful theater to see the grand opening of premiere of my new picture, I'm No Angel. Of course, I didn't call it I'm No Angel for nothing. Don't forget, come up and see me sometime.
Mae was a good businesswoman. She made personal appearances at movie houses throughout the country, plugged her movies, and the box office receipts soared. As the box office revenue on her pictures climbed, so did Mae's personal finances. She had renegotiated her contract with Paramount for $300,000 a picture, a share of the profits, and an additional $100,000 for her writing services. By 1935, she had the highest reported income of any woman in America, and Mae did not squander her money.
She was very good with finance. She was very good with investing her money. She knew to the dime practically every penny she had, where it was, etc. She knew a lot of things that most men really controlled, but she controlled it for herself and built herself a vast real estate empire that provided her with a great deal of money till the very end. She never really had to worry about finances.
She had large parcels of land in the San Fernando Valley and a ranch there where her sister Beverly lived. She had a beach house in Santa Monica where she often entertained, but her real home remained her beloved Ravenswood apartment. Mae thought it was cozy.
It's a small apartment, there were 2 bedrooms, and of course her famous boudoir with the mirrored over the ceiling and all. It was all ultra Louis. She had a baby grand piano, which had sort of like Fragonard or Boucher, a kind of paintings on the side. The room was very elegant. Everything was white on white, but it was actually sort of cream. It was very flattering. All the lighting, everything was very flattering to her. But it was a perfect setting for her, you know. But it was comfortable. You sat down on the couch, and it was comfortable.
As to her love life, Mae kept everyone guessing. She led people to believe that she had an infinite capacity for men, on screen and off. The writer F. Scott Fitzgerald said, "In a world of Garbos, Barrymores, Harlows, Valentinos, and Clara Bows, Mae West is the only type with an ironic edge, a comic spark that takes on a more cosmopolitan case of life's enjoyments." This enjoyment of life that Mae shared with her audiences put her into the forefront of sexual emancipation for women.
Mae West is very honest about that a woman can have the same sexual appetites as a man, they're just perfectly natural, and that she can even be the aggressor in the situation, and she can have a romance with somebody outside of wedlock and not be damned to perdition for it. All this was really quite daring in popular entertainment.
Ruby, I must have you. Your golden hair, your fascinating eyes, your luring smile and lovely arms, and your form divine.
Wait a minute. What is this, a proposal or you take an inventory?
Her provocative but often subtle manner of presentation drove the self-appointed censors and religious zealots into a frenzy. It wasn't so much what she said, but rather how she said it. Mae was 42 years old, worldly, seductive, and desirable. She struck a responsive chord with the public. Audiences loved her for telling it like it is. The Hollywood censors, reigning supreme at the production code offices, didn't. They stood, poised with their scissors, waiting to cut Mae's next, even vaguely suggestive scene. Mae would make 4 more pictures for Paramount: Go Into Town, Klondike Annie, Go West Young Man, and Every Day's a Holiday, all between the years of 1935 and 1938. She became one of the best-known women in the world. Her movies had enormous influence on society. Women sat up and took notice. So did the censors.
It seems to me that every 10, 20 years, somebody comes along from Washington who says, Americans should not be doing this. We need greater morality. Mae believed in freedom of everything. She never liked censorship. She would never believe in censorship. Mae thought that whatever she did on stage, the material she wrote, her Hollywood productions, that there was never anything really bad.
In 1937, Mae appeared on the Chasen Sanborn radio show with Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy. She played Eve to Don Amici's Adam.
Listen, tall, tan, and tired. It's time I told you a thing or two. Ever since creation, I've done nothing but playing double solitaire. It's disgusting. It's got me down.
Well, we've got a nice place here.
That's the trouble. It's too nice.
Well, I'm not complaining.
But I want something to happen, a little excitement, a little adventure. A girl's got to have a little fun once in a while. There's no future under a fig tree.
Oh.
For this remark, the network executives banned Mae from radio. And Will Hayes, czar of motion picture censors, told Washington that Hollywood would police themselves, and they were zealots, especially with Mae's scripts. Every Day's a Holiday, released in 1938, was the first picture to lose money for Paramount. The censors had their way. Mae tried to please them. She cut or changed scene after scene, and the film failed. She left Paramount and ultimately agreed to make a picture for Universal. What emerged in 1940 was the great classic My Little Chickadee, which united Mae and W.C. Fields in a spoof of the Western film.
May I? So, would you mind if I availed myself of the second helping?
Compromising me.
She didn't want any of the leading men to kiss her. She really wanted to feel that she had the freedom of a woman not being possessed by any one person.
Mae's desire for freedom found her moving from one affair to the next. Apart from show business, her reason for being was a secret she did not share with her public. She became interested in ESP and psychic phenomenon. She would often hold evenings of psychic readings for friends in the reception room of the Ravenswood. Perhaps she was looking for something beyond the footlights.
And her interest in psychics and the world beyond really became a whole world for herself. I am positive that there was this other side of Mae. Mae, the little girl. Mae, the private person that probably no one ever saw. When somebody gave her a good reading on a number of occasions, I saw a very happy, smiling face. So it was something that somebody said that obviously gave her a moment of joy beyond that which she attained listening to the clapping of an audience.
What was to be Mae's final picture for many years was released in 1943. The Heats On for Columbia Pictures was a musical extravaganza of sorts, which presented Mae with a new contemporary look. The picture died at the box office. Her career was her life and her one true love. And when her movie career slowed, she returned to Broadway with her famous creation, Diamond Lil.
She got the very bright, natural idea of reviving Diamond Lil in the late 40s. And that was a big critical and commercial triumph. She took it to London. She toured all over the country. This is the beginning where people realize that this is a great American institution here.
On February 5th, 1949, Diamond Lil opened at the Coronet Theater in New York. She took it on tour until November of 1951. She returned to radio after an absence of 13 years as a guest on Perry Como's Chesterfield Supper Club. This time, the Blue Nose censors didn't interfere. The sketch Comeo and Juliet was a classic.
Comeo. Wherefore art thou, Comeo?
Down here in yonder orchard below your balcony.
Why don't you come up and see me sometime?
In 1954, Mae's dear friend and longtime manager, James Timoney, died. He had been with her for 38 years, her link to the past, her early days in vaudeville. She would miss him tremendously, but life went on. The same year, Mae pioneered a nightclub act that would turn the tables on the traditional Vegas bill of fare. She surrounded herself with Mr. America types and invited the women in the audience to ogle the boys, the way men had traditionally ogled the girls.
With the nightclub act, because she thought, you know, if I just have myself, the women aren't going to come. And so she said, I've got to have something in that show that's going to bring the women in. And that's when she said, I'll have men, you know, muscle men. And that's why she did that. And she's probably the first one to ever do that.
Mae and her Adonises set box office records in Las Vegas. It was 1954. She was almost 61 years old and still packing them in. Once again, she was on the top.
You have a wonderful future. I see a man in your life.
What, only one?
Mae liked muscle men, just unique, different, big guys, and she loved to be around handsome people. And one day I did ask her, I said, did you ever have an affair with all of these men that you've met? And she gave me one of those looks and she said, there are some things, girl, you never ask a lady about.
Part of the Mae West myth was built around the number of men in her life. Early in the century, Frank Wallace had married her, but that didn't last. She was close with gangster Owney Madden, owner of the famous Harlem Cotton Club. At the Cotton Club, Mae met orchestra leader Duke Ellington and would later cross sensitive color lines when she put him in her movie, Belle of the 90s. Like all of the men in her life, just how close Mae was with gangster Madden is a mystery.
Now I can hear Mae say, when she spoke of Owney, she said, oh, so, always with a purr, oh, so vicious and so sweet. And she was very impressed with the fact, she says, you know, he took about 26 slugs and lived to tell the story. And she said, every couple of months they'd have to go to the hospital and dig another bullet out of him.
The final man in her life was Paul Novak, who had worked in her act in Las Vegas. He lived with her at the Ravenswood and would be there for Mae until the end.
For all the years that I knew Mae personally, the man in her life was Paul Novak. And I never met anybody who was ever so kind, so gracious, so good, who loved this woman more than life itself.
He adored her. Everything was done in the name of Mae West. Everything. He had her on a pedestal that was so high, I mean, and he enjoyed her being there, and needless to say, she enjoyed being there too.
In 1959, Mae's autobiography, Goodness Had Nothing to Do with It, was published to great success. One tends to forget that Mae was an accomplished writer. In that same year, Mae appeared with Charles Collingswood on TV's highly rated primetime show, Person to Person. Its specialty was visiting celebrities in their homes and conducting interviews as the camera followed. Mae pointed out various things in her apartment for Charles. When asked about the mirrors over her fabled canopied bed, she said, "I like to see how I'm doing." The show never aired. Now in her 70s, Mae kept busy with a variety of activities. She appeared on the Red Skelton and the Mr. Ed television shows. She continued to write and still enjoyed a night on the town. And then it happened. After being away from films for over 27 years, at the age of 77, She was asked to play the part of big-time casting director Letitia Van Allen in the film version of the Gore Vidal book, Myra Breckinridge. Mae had a lavish production number and received $350,000 for her appearance. She also got to act with the then reigning sex symbol, Raquel Welch.
You have all the kinky angles that are in right now. I mean, have you any that I don't know about?
Oh, Letitia.
What about studs?
They don't call you the queen of the casting couch for nothing.
Raquel Welch and Mae certainly did not get on, and that to me was to be expected. I mean, when you know that Mae doesn't enjoy being in competition with other women, it would be very difficult for her to be in a movie with the so-called sex symbol of the 70s when she still considered her to be the sex symbol of life.
Myra Breckinridge was a colossal failure, but Mae received good notices. Many thought she was dead and were surprised at her vitality. Mae was 77 years old, and she wasn't even thinking about retirement. Her final years were filled with honors. She was named the Sweetheart of Sigma Chi at USC. The Maskers Club saluted her in Hollywood, and there was one film left for her to do, Sextet, based on her play of the same name.
In Sextet, Timothy Dalton was her leading man. George Hamilton was guest, Ringo Starr. George Raft made a cameo appearance, which, you know, that was his last film and her last film.
Sextet premiered in Hollywood on March 2nd, 1978. Mae knew the film was less than perfect.
We got back into the limousine after the opening. I was looking out of my window on the left. She was looking out of the window on her right. Suddenly, she put her hand on mine, and I did turn to her. And she said, "Herbert, that was yesterday. Now I must think about tomorrow."
Mae suffered a stroke on August 10th, 1980, and died on November the 22nd at her beloved Ravenswood apartment in Hollywood. She was 87 years young.
To me, Mae West is unique in American show business. I think it could be arguable that there have been as great or even greater stars. But I truly believe that no star had greater impact in the long run than Mae West. Mae West was a one-woman sexual revolution.
Her legacy is that she was a true original, that when history is written, she'll go down as being a true emancipator for women, and that till the end of time, people will always remember some of those West witticisms.
Her career had spanned an amazing 80 years. From a confident little girl on amateur nights to one of the most famous and polished women performers in the world. Mae West was perhaps the greatest sexual icon of the 20th century.
Why don't you come up and see me sometime?
Shalom, shalom.